Oh, wow. Really? Oh, right. I don't know. Oh, shoot. Hey, AJ. Huh? Huh? You know, it's called. Did you? Bro, we should be able to sue for putting some. If you're not going to be an English teacher, you're so stupid. Why did Mr. Casey? Yeah, like suggest us to be. That's what I'm wondering.
I just want to like move fast. Pay attention, but I'm very like annoyed. Get it over. No, I already went. I want to talk to her. I don't have a folder. I don't know how to person thought. They didn't finish English.
I feel like I left it. I definitely left my notification.
I need to see some folder.
That's the wrong thing. I have to be able to see somebody.
Yeah. I really want to see. I really want to Hi, folks. I really want like a teenager to come and start living there.
We have no one in our Zoom yet.
I need to go to the nurse.
Let me write your pass real quick.
Make like coffee or tea in your.
I've had hot chocolate for a couple days with my with some of my other kids, but they've gone through 2 boxes in 2 days.
I'll bring-
2 boxes of
I'll
hot
bring my-
chocolate.
I'll bring my personal stuff.
Okay. Uh-huh.
It's just like, it's not even hot chocolate, it's water chocolate.
It's just water, I
But
know.
it's still good.
I found, you know what, I was looking at causes of death in Hong Kong. Why? I don't know. And Wikipedia is a loophole that should be illegal.
Went down and watched Mojo Rabbit Hole.
Yes,
Um,
and apparently it's jumping self-evaluation in charcoal.
What?
Yeah,
You're good to go.
so clearly they don't put those in a room with charcoal burning, it's like carbon monoxide.
Whoa. That's intense.
And then they burn themselves and they get rid of it.
Hello, folks. We'll see if, oh, AJ, you've got a birthday coming up
Yep, everybody back.
a week from today. Now that I say that, I know that we talked about it earlier, but I
Everyone
didn't
called me last night, and said, hey, I'm getting old, champ. Like, you're 18. No, another question. We might well just run 2 months apart.
How much?
Only 2 months.
Oh,
She's like, okay, what are we gonna do for our birthday? I said, ours? Your birthday's in July, mine is next week.
yeah, you don't celebrate together. Not that far apart. Last year, Mr. Casey and I celebrated together because our birthdays are exactly a week apart. I mean, he's like a couple of years younger than me, but it's the 19th and mine's 26th. So we had a fun party at his awesome house.
Where's the case when you need them?
I know. I know. This year on my birthday, I was like, I know we don't work together anymore, but we're still friends. Don't you want to? You and your new baby host a group of raucous teachers. Okay, I should have
Last year for my
asked
birthday,
Marilyn
all I
to
did was
wait a
play
few
Uno.
minutes, but
Last year for my birthday, all I did was play Uno.
I mean, that's fun if you like it enough.
Like, for 4 hours straight. I was playing Uno.
It can be a long game.
Online at that.
Crazy. Online Uno,
Yeah,
I've never
like
heard
the
of such
start
a
of,
thing.
like social, like quarantine. So my birthday hit right around quarantine. First started when things were getting really serious.
Yeah. Plug this guy in.
So like my birthday came around, my cousins were like, hey, let's play, because they know I like to play Uno.
Yeah.
I'm queen, or Uno, I'll beat everybody in here. Uno.
I looked at that. I looked at
Bring a deck.
I guess at some point after the exam, we'll have to put that to the test.
Bring a deck tomorrow and I'll
You
beat
know-
all my mama.
that. You don't want
All my mama.
You don't want this.
You said that about Connect Four.
I didn't say that about Connect Four. I didn't know that.
Times in a row.
Oh my God.
I couldn't even see.
I think you talk a big game.
Wow. Y'all bring Uno, everybody, it be all my mama.
Mm.
My mama did it.
No, that's not how that works.
We'll see. After the exam, we'll have to put it to the test one day in here. Okay, so first of all, we did not have a high turn-in rate for yesterday's essay, which is not great because number one, it'll affect your grade. And a lot of you can't really afford that. And number two, even though you can turn it in late, up to a week late, a week from the first essay, you'll have the second essay. And so I don't want you guys to get bogged down in all of this work, but I think I was pretty clear that the next 5 weeks will be pretty labor intensive as we get ready for the exam on the 26th. So it'll be here before you know it. We've only got, what, 8 weeks of school left at all? It's crazy to think about. But Thursdays are our day to work on rhetoric and our podcast project. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through the podcast project with you. And I have published this on, I almost said Facebook, Canvas. I have never and probably will never say Canvas the first time. I always go through like Instagram, Facebook, Google Classroom. I miss it. I miss it so much. I'm just going to open this in another thing so that I don't have to re-download a second copy. And last week we went through like the choices for podcasts. And so hopefully y'all have looked through those a bit and have found one that you like. But let's just go through the whole assignment because it's actually 2 parts. So the first thing you're going to do is choose a podcast from the list of options and listen to 1 season or depending on how long the seasons are, at a minimum 8 episodes. Because we actually have like 8 weeks to do this, which is beyond the time of the exam, but this is not really directly in preparation for the exam, so you can have a little bit of extra time. You're going to keep a reading journal as you listen to the podcast, following the options and instructions for journaling. I'll go through that a little bit more in detail in just a minute. And then you'll complete a project about the podcast you selected. And we'll look down there about what it is. And then you'll submit your journal and completed project through Canvas. So there's a very sort of rudimentary rubric here, just to show you that, like, what the scale is here. And you'll get 2 separate grades, one for the journal, one for the project. And you can kind of go through here and look at what, you know, a B, an A, or an A. And I hope that those are all the grades that we'll be getting. But if it's missing or incomplete, obviously not going to go great. So the first thing you're going to do is choose a podcast. And most of these are available for free on Spotify, iTunes, or the podcast website. Spotify is super easy to use. Like, even the free version is super easy. It just has ads. So most of these would be on Spotify. So I would recommend that. That's how I listen to podcasts. And it just depends on what subject you're interested in. There's all these history ones, crime and law, economy, identity, arts, politics, science, education, philosophy, and food. So there's all kinds of good ones that you can choose from. And hopefully some of you guys have already started thinking about this since I introduced it last week, and about what podcast you want to listen to. So then you're going to keep a journal of notes as you listen. And on Thursdays, the time will kind of be set aside for the one rhetoric practice that we'll do, that I kind of went through with you the other day. And I'll show you the one for today. But the rhetoric practice really only takes like 15 minutes tops, really. So the time that we have after you've done the rhetoric thing, you'll just have to work on your podcast. And for people who are virtual on Thursdays, I'll want you to stay while you're doing the rhetoric practice. And then once you turn that in, you can leave and listen to the podcast on your own. So this has given us some helpful options for note taking. The way that you can do the reading journals, you could do 2-column notes where you write important excerpts, or your own responses on another side, questions you have, connections, reflections. You could do it as an outline for each episode. You could do like a mind map or sketch notes, whatever works for you. But that's going to be half of the project. You'll get a grade for the reading journal. So you should have at least 8 entries, because if we're listening to a season or 8 episodes, that's at least 8 entries. And then you'll complete a project. So once you've listened to your podcast and taken journal notes, you're going to complete a visually appealing, compelling, and engaging presentation to synthesize what you've learned and reflected on. That should include the producer or narrator's background, how that person's personal life affected their writing, and why they chose to develop a podcast about this topic. A lot of times that will be included in the podcast. An analysis of the author's craft through the podcast, and you could talk about the narrator's tone, the structure of the episodes, the credibility of the evidence presented, or other rhetorical strategies like repetition, rhetorical questions, imagery. I think it would depend on what podcast you do as to which of those would be a better idea. And an overall evaluation. So you'll choose 3 of the podcast discussion questions and use them to respond in detail to the podcast as a whole. Your response for each question must include at least 2 pieces of evidence from the podcast to support your answers. So you can choose any format for your project as long as it can be submitted. This says via Google Classroom, Canvas, and y'all know that. So for example, you could create a Google slide presentation or a Prezi or a Keynote responding to the project prompts, and record yourself via Zoom or Screencastify presenting the project information. You could do a Flipgrid video. You could create an actual poster and take a picture of your poster if you want to do that. So you will submit your podcast assignment by Friday, June 11th. That's quite some time from now. But if we're working on this one day a week, And I mean, genuinely, you could go home over the weekend and listen to a whole season of a podcast and knock it out all in one go. That's totally up to you, but you will have the time in class to work on it for sure. So if you get done early, you can submit it before then, but that's the official due date. So just make sure that you're submitting both your journal reading notes and your completed project option. I do not have places yet on Canvas to upload those because since that's so many weeks away, I didn't want to like create something in a module where you'd have to go back and try to search for it. So I'll include something probably that first week of June, so you can start turning stuff in. Okay, so any questions about that before I move on? Nope, okay. So the other thing for today is the Maya Angelou detail exercise. And I kind of walked you guys through one of these the other day. It wasn't this one because I didn't want to do one that we're actually going to do in class. But over the next 5 weeks, you'll have sheets that look a lot like this, but this one is detail. We'll have a diction, a syntax, an imagery, and a tone. Not in that order, but I can't remember what order they're in. And they basically look like this, where you have a quote or a passage to read, 2 discussion questions, and an application question. So there's only 3 things to write, which is why it shouldn't really take you more than 15 minutes. And I won't spend all the time on Thursdays from here on out talking about all this and going through it, because now that we are going to know what we're doing, you can kind of just get started on it when you get into class. But so for this one, we're looking specifically at detail. So this is actually a quote. Oh, I said to Maya Angelou. It's Toni Morrison, JK. On Canvas it does, yeah, but it's a quote from, I don't even know why, like the Google Doc itself is labeled Toni Morrison, so I don't know why I put Maya Angelou, except for the fact that I was looking at another Maya Angelou one. But anyway, I picked this specifically because we're reading a Toni Morrison book now, and y'all might remember from the pre-reading stuff on Tuesday that The Bluest Eye was her first novel. She wrote about a girl, like a little Black girl who was obsessed with the idea of having blue eyes because she thought it made her like more similar to other people. All right, so this is the little passage. If my mother was in a singing mood, it wasn't so bad. She would sing about hard times, bad times, and somebody done gone and left me times. But her voice was so sweet and her singing eyes so melty, I found myself longing for those hard times, yearning to be grown without a thin dime to my name. I looked forward to the delicious time when my man would leave me, when I would hate to see that evening sun go down, because then I would know my man has left this town. Misery, colored by the greens and blues in my mother's voice, took all the grief out of the words and left me with a conviction that pain was not only endurable, it was sweet. So your 2 discussion questions that you have, the first one is, why are parts of this passage in quotes, and what do those quoted details add to the passage? So you just have to look back and see which parts are quotes, and it looks like maybe even some of them could be like song lyrics. The second one is, which details in the passage contribute to the conclusion that pain is sweet? And you'll fill in this little chart to show how she sets up that oxymoron. What in the passage, what details contribute to the conclusion that it's sweet, and which ones are more about the actual pain? And then the third thing you'll do is to think of a paradoxical feeling, such as sweet pain, healthful illness, or frightening comfort, loud silence, something like that. And then make a chart listing 2 details for each side of the paradox. So you'll kind of just copy the same kind of chart from before. And on almost all of these, it'll say like share with a partner or discuss with a partner. We don't have to do that part. So the first thing you're doing today is this. Any questions about this before we move on? Pretty self-explanatory. So you'll do this, and then once you're done, you can start working on your podcast project. And that's what Thursdays will kind of look like for the next 5 weeks. Time to work on the rhetoric practice and then podcast work. So those of you who are virtual, I just want y'all to stick with me until you get your detail exercise submitted, and then you can work on your podcast project. You guys got about 5 minutes. All right, there's the bell. You guys get the detail thing turned in ASAP, and I will see y'all tomorrow. We're gonna learn about fallacies tomorrow. I'm pumped about it.